Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Wrath of the Righteous with me, Bring It On. Let's see if we can't close this wound in the world. I'm a little concerned because a lot of my buffs are starting to fall off. We have most of the important ones still, so I'm not super concerned. Just a little bit.
The mortal who ventured recklessly into the abyss has now reached threshold. In Is, you struck down my creator and master Deskari, but if that makes you dismissive of his echo, if you think I do not pose a threat, then you are greatly mistaken.
The echo of Deskari tilts his head to the side thoughtfully. Despite his calm demeanor, his voice quivers with anticipation. You didn't want to fight me in the abyss, so why are you here now?
I was hunting the hand of the inheritor in the abyss, not you. And what a good hunt it was. But now things are different. Now you are the prey I covet more than anything else.
The echo laughs. Where's Deskari? Is he too afraid to fight me personally?
Master is in the abyss, in his realm. No, he does not wish to meet with you yet. A demon lord cannot afford 2 deaths in succession. It will kill them permanently.
The echo lets out some kind of strange scream. It sounds like the screech of a bird. I feel like 3 is going to lead to combat either way, and 4 is far more in character for my character, so you're just another monster for me to kill.
Just another mortal who thinks he can be something more than food for the forces of the abyss. He lost to you. He lost. The great Deskari himself lost to a mortal. So what happens if I succeed where the great lord failed? If an echo destroys the one its originator could not defeat, who would that make me? What would it prove? I'll risk my life to know. You are not just my enemy, you are my chance. A chance I won't miss.
The quiver in the echo's voice is more noticeable now. He is afraid. He is terrified by what he is saying, yet his eagerness compels him to continue.
The light, take you! This'll leave a bruise.
Areelu immediately took 2 big hits.
I'm alright. I'm alright.
Oh, hey, good job, Nenio. Alright, let's go use up some potions. Going to run a little short on heals, and they are very valuable mid-combat. He didn't have a unique sight.
Always be ready for the worst. I'm curious.
Alright, I doubt there's any or much loot laying around, but gotta be thorough just in case.
I know the way.
Alright, in we go.
Now that your souls are separated, he is growing weaker and weaker. Why won't you just let me kill you? Extract your soul and finish what I started.
Well, I don't want to die. The rift's violet flames form a menacing halo around Areelu. Crimson eyes are filled with rage. The shadow appears behind her and listens to your conversation, his head tilted slightly to the side. I can tell you've been preparing this place for battle. There's more to it, am I right? I sense barrier spells waiting to be activated, and there's something else. Something deadly.
You're so adept at magic. Of course, I've been preparing for our meeting. And hopefully I've prepared well.
There's a hint of pride in Areelu's voice, but she immediately catches herself. So the shadow is not just a part of the abyss. It's all that remains of your son's soul.
Yes, and what you did, it's like you tried to kill him again. As if you were one of the threshold dogs that broke into my home 100 years ago.
You forced it on me. And then didn't explain to me what was going on. Really responds, her voice hoarse with fury. Why do you keep chasing me? Isn't there another way to save the shadow?
No, there is not. Your souls are too closely intertwined. I cannot use another host. I need your soul. And I will have it.
I certainly do not intend to let you kill me.
I don't require your permission.
Areelu smiles harshly. I didn't realize we got all of our spells back. I should probably take a moment to buff up. Alright, Bismuth, I'm gonna sacrifice you to buy us some time, buddy.
I will resist.
Actually, this might be the better option. I may not have to fully buff up here.
You've crossed the wrong monk.
Prepare yourself.
Alright, maybe I do have to fully buff up here.
This way.
Areelu, you're 100% in the way.
Desna, guide my hand.
This will hurt.
I think Weird is the better option here for the chance to debuff. Let's go get Seal in here. It's my Areelu. Let's see about bringing land back once he gets Guarded Hearth down.
Please, help me.
I think she's in range right here. Nope, she was just out of range.
A calculated risk.
Into the fray!
I'll remove this obstacle. I try to get my body to science.
Right now they're both dead. Let's see if I can bring them back. I probably don't have to. I think my main character is going to do just fine up here by himself. In fact, yeah, he seems to be doing fine. But just in case.
This will leave a bruise.
This should do it.
It's getting a little ugly, but oh, I think we did it.
I never thought that I would be responsible for the creation of my most powerful enemy.
It really looks as though she's about to collapse, but she does her best to remain upright. I can see you, Suture. Show yourself.
I've been waiting for you to get distracted, so I can stab you in the back.
The Suture appears from hiding and looks at you balefully. I've uncovered your plan. The spells in this chamber, they're designed to kill you if something goes wrong. You've been preparing for this outcome from the start. Am I right?
How very perceptive. But you didn't think I would make it easy, did you? I won't let you win. You need me alive. You want to use me to close the wound, but I can destroy myself before you have a chance.
Areelu is wringing her hands in agitation. Plus 74. So I like this line in the first option. Is this really how you wish to go? The rest of it doesn't fit my character as much. I'm gonna go with option 2. I'll stop you, by force if necessary. So don't embarrass yourself with these pathetic attempts to prevent the inevitable.
Fine. Let's say I don't destroy myself. What happens now?
You lock eyes with Areelu. It is her will against yours, and you strive against her in this unspoken contest what feels like an eternity. But finally, the crimson fire in her eyes dims, her resolve falters.
You are stronger than I could have anticipated. As your creator, I should be proud to be defeated by the one I have imbued with power. Is there any higher praise? But I'm tired. You won't hear me pleading. Let us finish this experiment here and now.
Areelu's eyes are full of anger and disbelief. The wound above her heart is bleeding, and her shoulders are trembling, but she raises her chin defiantly. The defeated shadow rises and stands still at the very edge of the worldwound. Its gaze is focused on the violent flames of the rift. The shadow says nothing, but you can sense the direction of its thoughts. Take one last step to the yawning chasm. Together, what has been whole for so long must come apart at last, and only the wound's fire can finally free you from each other. And of course, we have to choose this one. You're right. I am stronger than you could have anticipated. I didn't need the power you gave me to win, and I won't need the soul you corrupted to close the wound. The shadow turns to look at you, without menace or fear, simply waiting.
Indeed. You need neither power nor soul. That's right, because you have my soul to sacrifice. Isn't that what you mean?
No. I won't even require your life. To close the wound, one needs to split the soul of a key in two, correct? That's almost exactly what I did, and I'm still alive.
To sever your connection completely. Now I understand. But it will kill him.
Areelu's gaze shifts to the shadow, then back to you. You see heartache and fear in her eyes. Do I want to spare Areelu? She's defeated. There's no glory in killing her at this point. We can bring her back to stand justice. So spare Areelu. I don't need your life, Areelu. Do what you will with it. I don't agree with that part. I'll close the wound myself. All it takes is a step beyond the edge.
Is that supposed to be merciful? Why would I want this life? Why, when everything I've lived for will be gone?
Oh, maybe this is the better punishment then. Areelu stops short, at a loss, her eyes darting between you and the shadow. Step into the wound with the shadow. Just a step beyond the edge. In the strange space you found yourself in, the shadow takes the form of a human teenage boy. He gives you a curious look. I'm tired. Will you let me go? Do you know where we are? We must be inside the wound, right? Maybe inside ourselves. Or both. I don't know. What happens now? You want to be free of me, and I want to go too. Our bond is almost gone now, but there's one last thread left. Once it breaks, we won't be connected anymore, and the worldwound will cease to exist. After all, Galarian and the Abyss are stitched together by the same thread, linked to your soul and me. Where do you want to go? I don't know. I was almost no one before. Now I'm someone again. But I'm not a living soul. Where will I go? Even I don't know. Part with the shadow. Go. Hope you're headed for the River of Souls, and for Asma's judgment. Thank you. I promise to remember you, but death is oblivion, so I'll forget everything soon. I'll become plainer essence, or maybe I'll be reborn as some otherworldly creature, but I won't remember. Either way, my time's up. I'm going. I'm fading. And you're now free.
I tire.
Who said that? Was the teenage boy supposed to be voiced? A life and death, destiny and great deeds, answers to mysteries, search for one's true path. The mind can comprehend all of these. And then, such concepts can be written down as a sequence of formulas, a series of lines, a chain of thought. Still, the moment always comes when it is time to wrap up, to reach a conclusion, to put a period at the end of the last sentence. The impossible rift, the bleeding wound that had tormented all of Galarian for 100 years, was finally healed. In a strange space beyond the horizon of the world, the commander parted with his shadow at last. Who else would have so rashly renounced his power for the sake of the faint idea of being himself? But the commander made his choice, and stuck to this path with a doggedness even I cannot help but respect, no matter how much grief and anger that decision brought me. The Fifth Crusade may not have lasted long, but in that short time, Dresden became the commander's city, his bulwark, his citadel. Unsurprisingly, he remained the ruler of the city and the surrounding lands after the spectacular victory at Threshold. The unusual alliance of various forces that helped the commander in the Battle of Threshold ceased to exist soon after the victory. The commander's allies left the lands of the former worldwound, spreading word of the extraordinary mortal to every corner of creation. The commander's accomplishments left a tremendous mark on history. In the next century, in just about every part of Galarian, philosophical teachings emerged that focused on the importance of being oneself, relying on one's own strength, rejecting others' gifts if they were offered not as a way of helping an equal, but as a boon to an inferior. The most influential of these schools of thought was named after the commander, and its core concept was the following. Every one of us has a shadow in our soul, and the shadow can make us stronger, but at the same time, can impede our self-understanding. To fight the shadow, even at the cost of relinquishing its boons and power, is the path to true strength of spirit. Although the commander became the symbol of the Fifth Crusade, there were still those among the Crusaders who were dissatisfied with his decisions. Years later, the word served as the basis for many alternate versions of the history of the struggle against the worldwound. Here we have worldwound deniers now. With the conclusion of the war, Dresden, the heroic fortress of the Crusaders, began to wane in importance. The memories of the gruesome battles faded. The deeds of the brave were forgotten. A mere century later, Dresden had once again become just another northern garrison, and the legacy of the Fifth Crusade began to slip into obscurity. Queen Galfrey returned to Nerosian with the intent to rule Mendev as before, but as it turned out, Mendevian society was hungry for change. The war-ravaged nation desired new leadership, but the Queen would not countenance yielding her authority to anyone else. She believed her duty to her homeland had not yet been fulfilled. Upon his return to Canabras, Overrun ranted in rage against those who had been governing the city in his absence. But contrary to all expectations, Overrun's inquisitors were far less vicious than in days past. It seemed the time he had spent fighting the Fifth Crusade had tempered him somewhat. The wardstones from the chain that once guarded the borders of Mendev were carefully disassembled, one by one. The angels that had been trapped inside returned to heaven to heal their wounded spirits and prepare for new battles against evil. The victory of the worldwound changed many things, not just in Golarion, but in the Midnight Isles as well. Nocticula spent many days pondering the words of a certain young and fearless prophet. Before long, the Lady in Shadow openly renounced her realm, and herself the Redeemer Queen. This revolt against her own demonic nature transformed Nocticula, severed her ties to the Abyss, and brought her to Elysium. There, upon creating a realm named Midnight's Palette, the Redeemer Queen attained divine power, and became the patroness of exiles. Was that all because of Ember? The now vacant throne was instantly seized by Shamira the Ardent Dream. However, the power could not compare to the might of the Lady in Shadow. The Midnight Isles, which had become a tempting prize for many demons, were plunged into chaos. The commander celebrated his victory over Ereshkigal. Little did he know that some demon lords go as far as forfeiting their own life to achieve their ends. The mask of the inscrutable Ereshkigal remained in the possession of the commander of the Fifth Crusade until the very end. He refused to, or could not find the strength to discard that sinister item, and shortly after the Battle of Threshold, he began disappearing for days at a time, then suddenly returning, unable to recall what had happened to him. What? I didn't put that mask on once. Do you need to just sell it and get rid of it for this not to happen? The Demon Lord Baphomet suffered a defeat. The worldwound was closed, and a convenient passage to Golarion was sealed along with it. Baphomet shifted his attention to the realms of the other demon lords. A cell of the Templars of the Ivory Labyrinth was soon discovered in Alushanira. The Demon Lord Deskari suffered a defeat. He bided his time, continuing to plot his invasion of Golarion, and after that, of heaven itself. The cultists that remained on Golarion went mad, one after another, tortured by the nightmarish dreams their lord sent to them. Now alone, Nevia left, quietly, unnoticed, leaving no notes or traces. No one ever saw her again. Man, I'm gonna give her a happy ending. Several hundred years after the conclusion of the Fifth Crusade, somewhere on another plane, far from both the Abyss and Golarion, two runaway Lolitos met, Monago and Shavaro. They met, never to part again. So Nevia gets a bad ending, but she deserved a good one. Monago gets a happy ending, when she definitely didn't deserve it. Having rediscovered his own story, the storyteller rejected the goddess's proposal. He was celebrated as a great historian, rightfully held the position of Dean of the History faculty at the Arcanumerium, the most renowned academy in Absalom. Another 40 years passed before his age caught up with him, and it was his turn to appear before the Lady of Graves. Something tells me that's not his canon ending. Finian, a Pathfinder who also happened to be a talking weapon, continued his travels in the hands of many warriors, seasoned and otherwise. Throughout the following centuries, he was lost in battle on a number of occasions, only to be found again in some fantastical treasure room on the other side of Golarion. Once again, Stila heard the call of the open road. Even after gaining mythic powers and coming face to face with the goddess and demon lords, He never stopped being a paladin and a wandering knight whose purpose was to help others. Staying true to friends was in Sela's blood, and it is said that even while journeying through the farthest reaches of Golarion, she tried her best to keep in touch with the commander. Their rare meetings were always filled with joy. Having properly fulfilled his duty to the mongrels, and to his surprise, avoided death, Lan was suddenly faced with a choice: what to do with his life now that it wasn't going to end anytime soon. His hesitation did not last long, and just a few months later, he went on a sea voyage to see the world he had saved. Ember joined the Redeemed Brotherhood. She never recognized herself as their leader or gave any orders, but her very presence inspired the former miscreants to perform great deeds. Over time, the Brotherhood grew into a major religious movement. Its preachers took a vow of poverty and walked the roads of Golarion, helping the needy, convincing villains to change their ways, and entreating both good and evil deities alike to be more merciful to mortal kind. Soon after the war, the tireless researcher of all things researchable embarked on a new journey. He had a sudden urge to know how much time it would take to visit every nation on Golarion. She returned after a year and a half with a pile of notes, which she promptly handed over to her assistant. After all, someone had to help her compile the entries for the first volume of the Encyclopedia Glorionica. It only made sense for her assistant to help, given that one of the entries was dedicated to him, the commander of the 5th Crusade, who had made Golarion history. Darren Arendelle was free from the other's gaze, but not from the watchful eye of Inquisitor Leoder. To the Count's great vexation, Leoder openly continued to watch him. It is unlikely Darren realized that this monitoring saved him from far more serious dealings with the Inquisition. The Count himself seemed lost for a long time. His old life was over. He struggled to find his place in the new one. He never lost his respect, or should that be his fondness, for the commander, and would often visit him in Dresden. Alright, good. I was afraid he was going to get arrested at the end. I wasn't 100%, but Leoder did manage to keep the Inquisition at bay. To his own surprise, Woljif Jefto became a war hero. Esteem and fame were shortly followed by great wealth. The Tiefling did not let his newfound fortune turn his head, but chose to invest the money in several profitable ventures and one charity for street urchins. Within a few years, his signature style came to include a top hat, a cane, and a bit of a belly. There's a lot of talk in the taverns of Absalom about the time. Soon after the end of the war, where Woljif appeared in the city in the company of Count Darren Arendelle. It remains unclear whether Darren treated the Tiefling as a wayward younger brother or a court jester, but he took pleasure in showing him the world. The third person in the group was rumored to be the commander himself. After the victory, Stocio returned home. Now a famed Crusader hero, he humbly officiated at a temple of Shaylin, painted, grew sweet-smelling fruits, and made the best wine in the region. His former kindly smile returned less and less often. He avoided talking about the war. When people asked about his brother's fate, he just curtly replied that Trevor had been killed by demons. During the war, Stocio had met an engineer by the name of Aaron Kerr. That meeting turned into friendship, which turned into love. Then it was time for the wedding. Later, the cleric would say that the only memory of his beloved had allowed him to cope with the terrors of the Abyss and keep his sanity. Reginald Derenge wrote a treatise on waging war against the demons, with a practical manual and a philosophical exhortation. And once that was done, he succumbed to the bleaching completely. He was posthumously reinstated in his order and buried with honors in the officers' cemetery. His treatise was used in all future wars against the Abyss by mortals, angels, and devils alike. Before he died, he managed to send a letter to the commander. Did it contain sincere farewells or a list of directives? Impossible to say. No one was privy to the contents except the recipient. The war changed Greybor. He left the assassin's craft behind and embarked on a search for his family. It took years to win their love again, but he had never been one to back down from a fight, so he won that battle as well. Greybor hung his axes above the fireplace, and became an upstanding citizen. The transformation was difficult for him, and many a time he would reminisce about the days of his daring youth. Still, there was one joy in family life that the dwarf could not have traded for anything in the world: his daughter Mora. She grew up to be an exceptional warrior, and watching her train brought Greybor true happiness. Originally had changed her nature, completely ridding herself of evil, but she would not dare to live among mortals. She took up residence in a small house away from their settlements. Shortly afterward, rumors began to spread. Some said there was a kind sorceress living in the cottage, or perhaps a reclusive saint. People come to her asking for help. She never refused anyone, and in time, earned their trust and friendship. When the former demon was not busy helping mortals, she spent time with the commander, who often visited her at her house. They had nothing to hide or be ashamed of, and yet, in her shyness, Bruchlai tried to conceal their relationship from prying eyes. "This is our Elysium," she would say, "yours and mine, and no one needs to know about us."
And what of me, the writer of these words? The half-demon witch known as the architect of the worldwound. I was defeated. The victor spared my life in a gesture that was not quite a boon, not quite charity. I was left without hope, without a chance of finding a purpose again. I lived out my remaining days in an isolated cottage, far from everyone, needed by none, discovered by none.
So I was under the impression that she would be brought back for trial. But I guess living out the remainder of her life without her son was punishment as well. I don't know how I feel about that ending.
I have recounted the story of my life for you, Pharasma, Lady of Graves. Not only of my life, but of the Commander's also. I believe the tale of such an illustrious figure would pique even a goddess's curiosity. Now you know everything. I await your verdict, Goddess.
Silence hangs over the boneyard. The Lady of Graves is weighing her decision. It seems the entire universe is holding its breath, awaiting her pronouncement. Who dared to break a silence so absolute? I would. Intervene. Though you are no longer here, your heroic deed entitles you to a say in this trial. I don't know if Areelu deserves mercy. Just because she had the power to try and bring her son back doesn't mean that she should had. People lose loved ones all the time and they don't go about trying to destroy the world to bring them back. Not saying that some wouldn't. But most of them grieve, and they move on with their lives. Areelu did not. So then we go with option 3. I appeal to your sense of justice. Great evil deserves a commensurate punishment. Your words ring out in the silence. They were heard, considered, and given their due weight.
The laws of the universe have existed for millennia. They are incontrovertible, but even they allow the decider of fate some degree of influence over the verdict. You wrought great evil. You killed countless souls and put existence itself under threat. Your soul is dark and incapable of atonement. Even the Abyss would be a reward for you rather than a punishment. There is no place in the universe for one such as you. So be it. Now you, the mortal who has risen so high as to stand boldly in the presence of the goddess of fate, you have done the impossible, and you will be remembered as long as this universe exists. Go, live out the rest of your life. I look forward to tales of your future deeds.
We did it! Finally beat the game. Longest series on the channel by, what, 24 episodes? That's right, they don't automatically scroll, do they? Oh, they do. Perfect. Alright, so I have this play in the background while we talk about the game. I have a lot to talk about the game. There's a lot to be said. I doubt I'm going to cover everything that I want to, because I didn't write anything down. What a great game. I mean, what a solid adventure. I mean, just so well crafted. Every act having like its own unique mechanic. Starting at Canabris, it's a smaller adventure. Like the Act 1 is just really tiny, right? It takes place within one city. Act 2 is just focused on introducing you to the crusade mechanic and getting you to Dresden. And then Act 3 is the crusade. Act 4, again, they kind of scale it back down a bit, where you're just in a city and exploring Elutionira. And then Act 5, they reintroduce the crusade, but it's a little different since you kind of have your infrastructure already there. I don't know, it was well done. It's definitely all gas, no brakes. It's like they asked you to get on the highway, got you up to 70 miles per hour, and then it's like oh hey, the brakes don't work. Especially compared to Kingmaker. It felt like you were in a war, which made sense. But there's never really like a low level point in the game. Like yes, you are low level, but you're fighting demons from almost the outset. Where in like Kingmaker, you actually start off low level and you're fighting kobolds and mites. Like it felt like a more low level adventure. And it gave you that progression. Where I never felt like in this game I had that same sense of progression. You're fighting the same enemies throughout most of the game. The soundtrack, oh boy. Did a fantastic job. Each mythic path having its own soundtrack that kind of like comes in and crescendos when you're interacting with that mythic path was just fantastic. The other music was great too. Fighting Deskari, fighting Baphomet. I love the Legend Mythic Path soundtrack with the trumpets blaring. It was fantastic. The game has so much replay value too. Each mythic path being so intertwined with the main story like that gives you so much opportunity to go back through the game and experience it in a completely different way. It's awesome. The Legend Mythic Path was fantastic. Having all those characters come to your aid because you refuse to accept the power, because everyone had their interest in you because of the power, and they wanted to pull you to one way or the other. Like Mephistopheles, for instance. He was there to make sure that you were acting in the interest of law and hell. But as an Azada, so obviously I wasn't, so he's got all mad and left. But then I chose the Legend Mythic Path, and he came back to my aid, out of respect. And that's really, really neat. As far as I understand it, the Legend Mythic Path isn't part of the actual adventure path, like the pen and paper path. So it's a really, really cool addition from Owlcat. I'm really glad I chose that route as my first one. As soon as I saw that as an option in the listed mythic paths, way early on, after the announcement of the game, I knew that was the one I had to go. There's really no other option for me for my first playthrough. It is easy to miss things in this game. I think there's 3 things that I ended up missing. I have to go back through in my next playthrough and make sure I get. There was the rune puzzle in Elutionira. There was that wardrobe in the arena in Elutionira. And there was that perception check in Camelia's room in the house she grew up in. I do wish they do away with the game over when your main character goes down, because I didn't get a lot of exciting fights. I think almost all my game overs, I think I had 6. I probably lost count. I'm pretty sure I had about 6 game overs because my main character died. But the rest of my party was still standing. I wanted more fights. Hands down, the most fun I've had in any fight in any CRPG I've ever played was the Flesh Market fight. My entire party went down except for my main character, and I got through it by the skin of my teeth. I used every resource I had at my disposal to heal up my main character, keep him in the fight, and it was just barely clutched out that fight. And it was hands down the most fun I've had in, again, any CRPG, probably any game of recent memory. It was awesome. I mean, the whole game was awesome. Just so much to talk about. The companions were fun and unique. I like how there was just some blatantly evil companions in your party just for the sake of being evil. It was quite the cast. Some of them I didn't really care for, but there were also some really good ones. I wouldn't have minded having a couple of my Kingmaker companions here in Wrath of the Righteous, but that's for another time. And I'm starting to draw a blank. There's so much to talk about, and I'm trying to pull it all up, and it's too much, so it's just cycling by too quickly. Should I even talk? It's been like, what, a 7-month series? Over 7 months for me to beat this game. It's the end of an era. I don't even know what to do now. I mean, I still have the DLC to go through. We're not done with the game. And as far as I understand it, the first DLC, you take your main character with you, so we're not quite done with his story yet. Yeah, they really crafted an excellent game with Wrath of the Righteous. Well, I guess that's going to do it. I can't think of anything else to talk about right now. Though there is a lot more to say. But I'll tackle that at another point, I think. I do plan on playing through the game. I want to experience each mythic path. Each one is just so unique. I want to go through at least once with each one and see what each one leads to. It's just crazy to me. So they took an already very complex game like Kingmaker, and they made it even more complex. I mean, kudos to Owlcat for the work they put into these games. Because not only do they add more classes, more mechanics, they added the mythic paths. There's so much to these games. It's just crazy. There's so much detail. All right, I'm gonna stop rambling. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the series as much as I did. Thank you for joining me on yet another adventure. I hope to see you guys in the next Let's Play.